Robert Plank Show, episode 185, The Book Activation Method. Overcome the fear of publishing and create the perfect book to boost your business with Deborah Ager. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. Our guest today is Deborah Ager, and she's going to be talking to us about making some books. And Deborah founded Radiant Media Labs and the Book Activation Method workshop to help experts turn their expertise into books so they can gain more visibility, speaking engagements, and clients while spreading their good ideas. So Deborah, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. And so tell me a little bit about yourself and about this whole the book activation method thing you have.
Oh, sure thing. I founded Radiant Media Labs and the Book Activation Method as a blend of my skills. I have a marketing background and I also have a writing background. And I realized that there were a lot of speakers who could benefit from having a book. And I realized that a book would help a lot of people propel their business forward. And so I sort of put my skills together with what people needed and formed this workshop for them so that they could create their books.
Cool. And so what kind of skills are we talking about exactly?
Well, you mean my skills?
Yeah, you said you put some
Yeah,
skills together to sort of make this business a whole complete thing.
exactly. So I have a long career in digital marketing and online marketing. I've worked for a professional speaker, and I used his book to help him sell lots and lots of speaking engagements. So that's where I first started to see how the power of a published book could really help move business forward and get more revenue, and even more importantly, help more people who need what it is that you as a business owner offer. So I started to see the power of that probably back in 2007, 2008, and then flash forward to today. A few people approached me about writing their books, and then I realized I would love to help them and get their good messages out to more people. So it's really, I think what I really love about it is helping people with good ideas, spread their ideas, and get that good message out to a wider range of people.
And so, I mean, sort of along those lines, I mean, with these clients that you work with, I mean, where do you see them being stuck the most?
A lot of people have fear around getting their idea out there. I'm not sure anyone who's listening to this who started a business already may have felt fear around starting that business. I think it's pretty common, and I think that fear comes up when we're starting out any new project, or even doubt. And it's that part of our brain that's saying you can't do it, you can't do it, and who are you to think you're the person to talk about this topic? So I do have a lot of conversations with people about those particular challenges and how to get around them.
Okay, and I mean, could you sort of unpack an example of that, like someone who had that fear and had that doubt and was kind of stuck, and then you worked your magic and you got them past it?
Yeah, and I love to think that I'm the one working all the magic, but really it's each individual person because we have to conquer our own fear. And what I like to think of it as is we're not really fighting our fear and we're not trying to get rid of it. The fear is actually, I would rather embrace it because it's going to show up no matter what. And we're never going to have that perfect life where we have absolutely no fear whatsoever. So the big question, I think, is how can we embrace that fear and use it to move forward despite feeling scared or despite feeling fear or doubt? And I think what's really important is to take small actions and take small actions every day. So in my workshop, I take people through the whole process of organizing their book and coming up with the idea, and then they leave with words already written toward the book. And I think that just even starting the book is so scary to people, but having that already done leaps them over that potential challenge. And then when it comes to the individual fears, when I talk with people individually about what they are experiencing, I think it's really helpful when people know. I think probably 99.9% of people have similar feelings. And I think it's really helpful to other people to know that you are going to have this fear, and then you can just sort of kick it to the side and say, or give it some ice cream, keep it busy somehow, and then just keep on moving with what you want to be doing in your life.
That makes a lot of sense because I mean, it's like the more you fight that fear, the more attention you give to it, the harder it's going to be to overcome it. And so you said that you do these workshops, and people go there and people kind of interact with others who are in a similar situation with them. And so like, what do they go home with? Are you saying, like, do they outline the whole book? Do they have a couple of pages written? Like, what are you getting them past exactly?
Yeah, so in the group workshop, we work on outlining people's books. And so it goes through my whole process. First, we talk about the market, what market they're trying to reach and what their idea is. In general, I usually work with people. I don't think a book is what someone should be doing when they're first starting out in business. I think that's really important. So I'm working with people who've been in business for a while, and they already have a lot of knowledge. So they have ideas, but they might need help narrowing down the ideas or organizing them. So the first step focuses on mastering your market and your idea. And I have a process that I go through with people where they identify their perfect book buyer, they gain clarity on what they're trying to do with their book. And then I like to talk with them. The second step is I talk with them about aligning with their mission, because writing a book is challenging and difficult. And if you don't know why you're doing it, then you may not continue. And so I think it's really important to understand how the book is going to help you with your business. Will it provide revenue? In the form of book sales? Will it provide revenue in the form of speaking engagements? Are you aiming, how do you want to release it? Do you want to go through a traditional publisher or through Amazon? There's benefits and downsides to both. And then, or do you want to use your book to gain more authority and credibility? Or is it all of those things? So I think getting more clear about it really helps people understand why they're going to do all this work.
That makes a
And
lot
then
of
we go,
that
oh, go
makes
ahead.
sense, because that way they're not just doing the book for the heck of it, right?
Exactly, exactly. I really look at the words in the book itself, as a foundation for a business. And that doesn't mean that every business has to have a book, but if one is going to have a book, I look at it as something that's helping to support the business.
Right. And so when you work with people and you're figuring out, like the what the market wants and what, their mission is and all these things, like, do you ever come across people getting maybe like a little too bogged down, or a little too much of like looking at all the work they have ahead of them and kind of quitting before they start? Do you ever see that?
Sometimes, yes, I think people get so overwhelmed. And a lot of times when we're experts around our own topic, it's hard for us to see it with fresh eyes. And I think that this process helps people see their own material with fresh eyes. And also in the group format, it's great because you get comments from not only me, but from other people. And I think that, I mean, even if you don't take a class, I mean, you can get these from your friends and colleagues. But I think what's really nice is having that outside brain looking at your work and asking you questions that might be so obvious to you that you wouldn't think, oh, this might be confusing to people, or I should explain more about, X, Y, or Z. And I think the process that I put together helps get people past feeling bogged down, because we're going through a step-by-step process to get those ideas out of their head from brain to the page. So I think that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because people aren't just making something up as they're going along. They're using your system that other people have used, so they have more confidence in that, and everyone else in that group is in the process of using that system. And so when we're talking about people making a book, I mean, like, what sort of book are we talking about? Are we talking like a thin book, like a 200-page book, and are we saying this is something that is going to take like a year or a month? Like, what's the scope of these sorts of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends. There's some people who want to do smaller books. I'd say somewhere around 50 to 120 pages is usually how long the books that I work on are. Um, it doesn't mean that someone couldn't do a longer one, but I think that the right number of pages would equal, would really depend upon, are you able to say what you need to say and in that amount of space. So, if it needs to be 60 pages, then 60 pages is the answer. And I think that, mapping out the ideas and mining the material that you have in existence on your blog and in podcasts, in any kind of speaking engagements that someone's given, being able to go through all that material and figure out what's there and what can be included will really help determine how long the book is. And as for how long it takes, that's also, it's a bit of a tricky question, because it really depends. Is it going to be someone's number one priority, or are they working on that a little bit along with another project? So it could take for someone who's going to put everything else aside, they could write a short book of 50 pages or so, probably in 3 months. That would be really fast. And that would be a first draft as well. So there might still be some editing that needs to happen after that point. And then someone who needs a bit more time, maybe more like 6 months, but still it would have to be a fairly high priority. It can't be, the fifth project that the person's working on. So I think that that's important, is when someone decides to write a book, it's just making sure that you're putting time in your schedule for it. And it will make sense to put time in your schedule for it if you understand how it's helping your business.
Right. I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like it all kind of connects together. And so when someone's in this sort of situation, like if they're making, and maybe it's like their second book, and maybe it's the number 2 or 3 priority, and so it might take 3 to 6 months. I mean, do you see people having any sort of difficulty as they're approaching the end of the book, like a sort of like they've been working at this for however many months, and now that they're near the finish line, do you ever see anyone either like slow down or burn out or anything like that?
Oh yeah, it's terrifying, and things go wrong because if you're trying to run a company, you may have arranged to have other people take over some of your duties for you, but then maybe something happens and they really need you to come in, or maybe you catch a cold or something that slows you down. So there's always unexpected things that occur, and then also, usually towards the end of writing a book, there's some kind of freak out period where you realize your words are going to be out there for other people to read and even judge, and that's really scary to people. But what I do is I invite people to look back at all the work they've done so far. And since I work with people who are experts and have had a business for a little while, they've already done a lot of so-called testing, even if they didn't think of it as testing, but they've given speeches, or they've taught workshops, or they've created products, or they had a website. And so through all the ways they've gotten their business out there before, they've been getting feedback from people, or maybe they had an email newsletter list. All those different ways you've gathered people to you, and those people have been giving you responses in the form of buying things, in the form of testimonials, in the form of emailing you and saying your product was really great. So you already know that the work is good by the time you're putting your book together. It's just a matter of getting over that last hump of, oh my gosh, it's going to be out there. But then I think it's important to remember all those other pieces of my business I got out there were well received. So chances are that my book will also be well received.
And I like that. And it sounds to me like, like the people that you work with, they've been business owners this whole time. Maybe they've been, podcasting or like you said, speaking or blogging, and so they've already kind of been fleshing out their greatest hits for the last few years, and getting feedback on it, and like figuring out the way to make it sound good and make sense and be catchy and be simple. So it sounds like whether people realize it or not, they've already been getting feedback on the material that will be in their book.
Exactly. Yeah.
So do you have any more steps with this system that you're willing to share? Like number 1 was to master their market and their idea. Number 2 was align with their own mission. What are the other steps?
Sure. Yeah. Number 3 is mining your material. So what I find is, because I do work with people who know their material pretty well, they do have a lot of blog posts and presentations. And so what I do is I help them go through their materials and figure out what can be included in their book. So we start listing out overall themes and ideas. And what this is helping us do is get ready for a later step where we're going to start mapping all of that. So that's step 3, mine your material. Step 4 is marking out the tools. So I had a client recently who really had a challenge with finding the time to write. So we came up with some really creative ways, despite her hectic schedule, to help her carve out time and space to write. I consider time and space to be a tool. Then there are also other tools that might help, like calendars or ways to collect information. So Evernote can be really handy. If there's research involved, there's tools that you can use to help you gather the latest research for your book. And then the 5th step is map your mind. So that's where we sit down and we make a mind map. And you can Google, anyone who's not familiar with that method of brainstorming can Google and see what a mind map looks like. There's also some online mind mapping tools. I always ask the people I'm working with to draw them because I think scientifically it's better to have that connection between your hand actually doing the writing and your brain, rather than just typing something into a system. So I really invite people to get really messy and map out their ideas in a mind map. And what's really cool about that, in high school, we were often taught how to outline, and that kind of goes from top to bottom. But what's lovely about the mind map is that you can go in any direction, you cross out things, move things around. I just went through the process with a client, or I went through this process with a client in a one-on-one session about a week ago, and we were doing that. We were moving things around. We used Post-it notes for ideas. We weren't sure where they would go, and then we, moved those around too. So we use different color markers. It was really all about just getting out of our, it doesn't have to look perfect, and just being creative with it. And then step number 6 is moving from brain to book. So that's where we start to figure out what the to-do list looks like. And you asked about overwhelm and getting bogged down. So breaking that to-do list into doable chunks is something that we work on. And then setting a word count goal or a time goal, if that's what works best. And then using the schedule that we put together during the Mark Your Tools phase so that people are actually sitting down and writing on a schedule. And then I work with clients. Sometimes they want to write it. Sometimes they want to speak it. So that's another trick people can use, is that you can record yourself and your ideas and then get the transcripts made and sent to you. And then you can edit those ideas into a book format. So that's kind of a really handy way to get the words out in a way that doesn't feel like writing, but it kind of is. It's like secret writing. And then the last step is marketing. So then I work with people to use the book in their business so that they can market themselves. And I've done this myself because I've written, or I put together, I have 3 of my own books I've either co-edited or written, and for all of those I did a lot of marketing for them, and that helped me get speaking engagements and interviews and guest blog posting opportunities that I would not have gotten otherwise.
Awesome. And it sounds like, as you're explaining this whole system, it sounds like that every step of the way there are probably like 5 or 10 ways people could go about it, right? Like there's different ways people could go about, for example, use these different kinds of tools, or mind map in this certain way, or have their schedule based on the word count or based on the minutes. And so what's interesting about your process here is that it's like the same steps with everyone, but then within those steps, depending on the person's personality and how what skills they have, and if they're technically literate, maybe they'll use more computer stuff versus not. And so it sounds like it's the same steps for everybody, but what you do is you figure out what works best as far as someone's personality or someone's work habits to kind of fit their personality into the steps.
Exactly. Yes. You hit the nail right on the head there. And one of my clients just sent me a testimonial and said, one of the reasons I love working with you is because you don't try to hammer me into some cookie cutter factory-made book process. Instead, I've worked with her in a very tailored way, tailored to what she can accommodate in her schedule and what she wants to do. And I do try to do that because I feel like it is a creative process, and each expert author will approach that in a different way. And I like to make that comfortable for people.
Cool. And so, sort of along those lines, like, do you have a case study for us, like either with one of your clients or with you, just as far as if you started with just not even an idea, or went through a mess of ideas and then sort of refined it? Do you have a cool story like that where you went from just an idea and then finished with the book?
Sure. Yeah. For one of my clients, the book was on digital marketing, and we came up with an outline together and discussed it, and I provided some feedback on that. I think in that case, he had a bit of an outline already made by the time he came to me, if I recall correctly. It was a while ago, but anyway, so we put that together, and he had some presentations for some of the sections he wanted to talk about, and then he had some case study stories that he wanted to share about using his process with clients. So we recorded a lot of that, and then I took those recordings and I hammered them into shape, kind of chiseled, his great ideas and so on, into shape, and then formed them into chapters. And then we worked from there to turn it into a book. And then at one point, he took all the words, and then he took what I did and made some modifications, and then added, worked with a designer to add graphics to it. And then we ended up with a book. So it's pretty exciting, and he uses it for his speaking engagements now. So he's got that there for his prospects and current customers to purchase, so that he can get the word out about what he does. And I think what's really powerful about it is that when you share stories, if you can share case studies, people can feel aligned with that as opposed to feeling like they're being sold to. So instead of standing up on stage and just trying to sell to people, he's sharing stories and then they're reading the book, and his particular audience can say, oh, this is how he did that for that company. Maybe he can do that for us. And then they get curious about it, and then they can contact him to get more information.
Right, and even just like as far as the way that I like learn and listen to stuff, like I always appreciate like I like knowing like the facts or the steps, and then I like to go into like those steps and apply it in a sort of like a story, as you said, and then but then if someone's just doing a quick talk or a quick blog post or something or a guest blog post, then there's not necessarily the time to get into stuff like that, and so that sounds like a pretty cool tool for everyone to have.
Thank you. Thanks.
And so, so sort of as we're talking about, so it sounds like a lot of people need a book, especially to open up these doors and to get these other opportunities. And can you tell us about where people can find you and about your workshops and your products and stuff like that?
Sure. People can find out more about my work at the book activationmethod.com and also radiantmedialabs.com.
Cool. So
And
oh, go ahead.
yeah, oh, sorry. At the bookactivationmethod.com website, I have a 3-step cheat sheet to help people get clear about their perfect buyer. So that's available for people. Just sign up and then it gets sent to them. And I don't know, a lot of people have written to me and said they really found it useful to help them get clear about what they wanted to do with their book.
Well, cool. And so, so if someone's listening to this podcast, Deborah, and they've liked what they've heard so far about what a book can give them and the different obstacles that they can overcome, but then they're hearing about this cheat sheet and they're saying, I don't know, like maybe I'll delay a book a couple of months or a couple of years, or they say, I don't know, I'll get to that later. I mean, what would you tell someone who's just sort of hesitating, and what would you tell them to have them drop everything they're doing right now and go and run and grab that cheat sheet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had someone who became a client who said, I don't know if I can work on this book and I'm going to put it off. And I said, well, let me just ask you one question, because I'm not going to force anyone to write a book. I just said, what will be the cost to the people you serve by not reading your ideas? And, she helps people solve a particular problem. And I think that question is a really good one to ask. If you as a business owner are helping people solve problems, then if you don't get your message out there through a book or other methods, what is it costing the people that you serve? Because you started a business so you could help people. So that's just something to think about.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good answer, and it's a really good way of thinking about it is a lot of people think about, well, what's the cost of me not doing this? But you're taking it one step further and saying, well, there's a cost not only to you, but to all these people that aren't going to be able to find you, and people that aren't going to be able to solve the problem that your book will solve once you finish it and market it and publish it and all that good stuff.
Right, right. And then you brought up the idea of cost, which I think is important. So I think it's also important to look at the ROI of the book. I have different offerings at different price points, for instance, but for anyone who's thinking about writing a book, it's also important to look at that just like any other thing you would look at for your business. How much does it cost? And then what will that get me back? Like I put $1 in, how many dollars am I going to get out? So if you're a speaker and that's something that you really want to be working on and you've spoken before, then how many speaking engagements do you need to pay back the cost of that book? And sometimes it's really not that many. It's one speaking engagement that you would not have gotten otherwise, and you've just paid back your investment on the book. So that's just something to think about too. So that's why I think it works. A book is great for certain kinds of business structures, and it might not be great for other kinds of business structures. It's a very personal business decision.
But I like that way of how you put it, is if someone is, for example, looking to put out a book and use it to get speaking gigs, I mean, if it only gets them, 1 or 2 or 3 in the next year, then now the cost of the book has come back multiplied and stuff like that. And so
Right.
so awesome. So the websites are radiantmedialabs.com, and then to grab that cheat sheet, that is bookactivationmethod.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. So, I mean, I really enjoyed our conversation today, Deborah, and I liked everything you had to say about making a book and, making a book that is done the right way, but is also fun and fast and all that cool stuff. And so, I really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for sharing what you have to share with us today about making a book.
Thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Do you run your online business using WordPress? Did you know the number one reason why WordPress sites get hacked is because of outdated plugins, outdated WordPress, or just flat out not knowing what they have out there? How many times have you created a test site and just let it sit there? You're leaving yourself at risk. Besides that, you're wasting a ton of time whenever WordPress updates or your plugins update. There's a better way. Check out Website Remote, where you can manage all your WordPress sites from one simple to use dashboard. I'm talking about comparing what's on each site, comparing what versions are out there, and most importantly, choosing what you want to update when you want to update it with one single click. This is the way that you need to manage all your WordPress sites, and we have a special just for you being a listener of the Robert Plank Show. Head on over to websiteremote.com/trial. That's websiteremote.com/trial to get your 99-cent trial started today.